Hello, I'm Raphael. My latest project, I call it Brickflats. I replace damaged bricks or damaged walls with holes in them. I try to repair them with little pieces of art that are in itself little flats with figurines in them. I come from a design-driven animation background where there was always something to build for stop motion projects, and so I sort of, besides the work I do in animation, also started to build stuff just for myself as sculptures or little pieces of art. I never dreamed of going to London specifically. It just so happened that actually with a paper craft project, sort of 6 years ago, I got an invitation to do that here in London, and just never left. The topic that's very close to my heart is housing in general, and rent in big cities is just extremely high, and so it was always sort of interesting to me what living conditions we try or we accept in return for something else. And yeah, I lived in what can only be described as sort of like a little bit bigger cupboards. I remember the first room I had in New York as an intern didn't even have a window, so it was literally a cupboard. But I think it's just a huge topic of our time. Space is getting less. People are getting more and more people live on this planet, and I think the spaces just get smaller and smaller that we can sort of occupy in big cities. I had a full-time job, and I had this very short commute just along the canal, and it's a very narrow space, and there was this one cobblestone that stuck out, and it sort of seemed really dangerous to me because on the canal in the morning, all the commuters or a lot of commuters biked there, and if one just crashed into that cobblestone, that would have definitely led to disaster. But somehow every commuter knew about this cobblestone. No one ever tripped over it. People just avoided it, even though it stuck out quite a bit. But also, no one ever repaired it. So that stuck with me, sort of. And I then on walks just realized, okay, there's more. Like there's damaged walls, there's some holes everywhere. Some public walls just really never get repaired. And wouldn't that make sense to put sort of like this idea I had into those walls? My connection to street art is very slim. In New York, I, through friends, met street artists and always sort of was quite fascinated with it. I also sort of got in contact with a street artist named Curtis Kulik, who does this tag that says "Love Me," and it's spread all over New York. I think a big influence for me definitely was Space Invaders. I love Space Invaders. At that point, I never thought I would do a street art project myself, but that's how I got in touch with it. At the beginning of the project, I thought I would just find exactly the size of a brick spots where I can just put them, but I quickly realized there's a whole variety of sort of like the damaged walls, and it's not always a full brick missing. Sometimes it's just part of a brick. Lockdown hit, and lockdown made me just sit at home a lot, which made this project come to the forefront of my mind as well, because at that point I really felt boxed in myself into my flat, which just sort of gives the project another layer, right? Being boxed into your flat. And at that point, that also gave me a lot of time to develop the project more, and I started to basically build a little studio at home to really I guess make these things. A huge influence on the design of those figurines was that I come from a sort of graphic design based animation place, and anything that I can simplify makes it easier to understand. Much like street signs or typography, the simpler it is, the easier it is to understand. One time I I had a kid or a parent write me that the their kids discovered a brick flat, and they went home and rebuilt one with Lego and tried to get the parents to buy them resin to fill it, and they also wanted to put it in the street. So I think that's sort of my favorite story. And yeah, from the first test until the first brick flat that was possible to put in a wall, it kind of took a year. These things are now made out of clay sort of substance. It's called milliput, but it's essentially sort of like a clay that is quite moldable. You can sort of sculpt it quite nicely, and it hardens. It hardens to a level that's really robust, which is important. And then I spray paint them. And for like sort of finer details, I mean they're not very detailed, but for the finer edges, I use paint with a brush and just to do some little touch-ups. It's really hard for me to say how long it takes to make one, because I don't usually work on it full time. Well, I guess maybe like 2 to 3 days for a smaller one, like full-time days, and probably 3 to 4 days for a full brick-sized flat. Usually I measure the holes I want to put a brick flat in, and after measuring them I build sort of like the base, the frame for the brick flat. I go back to the place and see if it really fits. There's backstories to the mugs, the tea mugs. That's it's sort of a reference to my girlfriend. My girlfriend keeps collecting, when she's working, she keeps collecting all the mugs in her room. Well, it's a sweet thing, no? It's sort of like a little love letter. To make a resin cast, I have to. I'm gonna glue this onto this perspex now and fill this brick flat from the back with resin, so that this front then has a completely smooth surface. And this in the end I'm gonna take off, yes. Yeah, I tend to be a bit on the perfectionist side of the spectrum, I'm pretty sure. Usually when I work, I can't do that. I have timelines, I have schedules. But with these brick flats, I really like to take my time. I'm gonna do the resin cast now of one of these brick flats here. I need to mix the resin for 7 minutes, and then I need to quickly put it in the resin tank. So I don't have a lot of time there. I have like 7 more minutes to put it in under pressure. Okay. Otherwise it starts to harden and I don't get the bubbles out anyway. This whole process of resin casting was quite a fun one for me, because I did not have anyone to teach me that at all. And this is all me sort of ordering it online during lockdown and watching YouTube videos. Because small air bubbles we get rid of in the pressure tank, even though we see a lot of them now. They should all be invisible afterwards. We're putting the resin cast with the still liquid resin into the tank. Then we're gonna put it under pressure so that air bubbles get condensed to a minimum, not visible for the eye anymore, just so that we get a really glass clear finish of the resin. Still see the bubbles coming out here. It makes me a bit nervous. There's still air bubbles coming out. Yeah. That's my little tester. Once the resin cast is in the pressure tank, I don't see how hard it is, right? I don't have any excess. And this is what it looks like afterwards. Pretty glass clear. We do have some bubbles, as expected, but I think we can live with them. There's one next to the laptop, and there's a little one inside the cup. But I think we just need to close off the behind, and then it's ready to go into a wall. Yeah, I have a feeling I'm not sort of like done with the design process anyway. Right now I'm still making characters that have sort of 2 arms and 2 legs, but I'm really in love with this design. For example here, which is way more abstracted with the entangled lovers. Usually when I put brick flats in walls, I do this either fairly late or fairly early in the morning. I don't like to go during the night, because then it looks like I'm maybe breaking in or something. And when I go early in the morning, there's just less people around, obviously, and because it is quite a tedious process, me sort of like standing at the wall and doing this for a while. I don't really want people to just flock around me and look at what I'm doing. Usually now I try to make them specific about the place they go into. With this Brickflats here on Matthias Road, even though it's quite simple, the plan was to, for the first time, actually also take the surroundings into the design of the brickflat itself. So if you look closely, if you look at the brickflat and if you look what's behind the brickflat, the council building, they match quite exactly in color scheme. And that comes from me not being from the UK. When I came to the UK, I quite immediately recognized sort of council buildings everywhere. They have a unique, distinctive design, and that is something that I kind of wanted to incorporate into these brickflats as well. So this little guy I call Ping. It misses its pong for I guess a round of ping pong, and it's placed next to a ping pong table. The idea behind it is that during lockdown, when I really started this project, I played a lot of ping pong, and I'm quite happy I had my girlfriend during that time to basically just whenever we both felt like it, could go out and play ping pong. For me personally, there's also just so much joy when I create something that I can then install in the public world. I approach it completely differently. I'm much more free because I know that it's not going to be viewed the same as something that needs to fulfill some commercial purpose. It just needs to live in the world, and people are appreciative of it, even if it's imperfect. There's just also so much joy that I get out of putting it in the street, seeing people interact with it, unexpectedly discovering it. The images I get, the photos I get of sort of like mostly, or like the ones that warm my heart the most, is when kids discover it, right? That's only possible if it's in the street and free to access and see. The fact that it's illegal is something that I don't really think about that much. I feel like I almost repair walls, since I'm really just filling holes that have been there already anyway. I'm not sort of like damaging walls by myself and then put something there. Street art, I guess, in general, it's a tricky one, because if people like it, right, it's considered art. If people don't like it, it's considered trash and vandalism. I guess it's a really hard thing with art anyway, because what is good, what is not good, right, is very subjective.